Hi, it's John Terry, best-selling author and financial success coach. And I want to thank you for joining me for this educational event. Let me open by asking you a question. What if you could become your own bank? Have you given that some thought? Would you like to know how banks and Wall Street manage money and the things you can learn from them to more effectively save for college, to buy the home of your dreams, or be able to enjoy financial security in retirement? If you've ever thought about any of those things, you're in the right place. Well, we spend the next few minutes together talking about how you can become your own bank. You know, it's always been said, and my uncle, who was a CPA, reminded me, John, making money is important. And there's two key elements to that. Number one is time. You've got to have time. And number two, you've got to have some money. If you don't have either one of those, it's very difficult to create wealth and to be able to save for the things that you've always wanted. But I learned a few things from my uncle, my grandfather, who is a banker, opportunity to learn from his wisdom and resources as well. And I want to share some of those insights with you in this educational event. But I want to open with a couple of questions. Are you 100% sure you're going to have a great retirement, or do you have some doubt? Well, what if I could show you how banks earn interest, and that's how they make money, while consumers pay interest, and that's how they struggle to be able to save for future spending needs? Now, what if I could also show you how you can save more of what you bring home every single paycheck right now within the confines of your current budget, and be able to invest that money so you'll have more money to spend in the future for the things that you desire to have for yourself? That's what we want to talk about for the next few minutes. Again, my name is John Terry. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a financial success coach. And for the last 30 years, I have been educating consumers on a variety of financial topics. You see me here with my beautiful wife, Yuri. And I want to thank you for taking a few moments to be at this event today. I also want to say thank you to the financial professional that invited you to this event. They have been uniquely trained in the strategies I'm going to be sharing with you today. And the insights and information I'm going to be revealing to you, they will be able to personalize for you in your own unique situation to accomplish the things that are important to you. So let's get started. You know, what you don't know about money is costing you money. Now think about that. When we look at the average American household, here's what we typically see. The average American household carries around $250,000 of debt: home, car, credit card, student loans, other whatever debt that might be. So about 34% of every dollar that they take in goes to service the interest of those payments. We pay about 40% of our income in taxes, not just income taxes, but all the other taxes that are assessed either at the federal, state, or local level. That leaves about 23%, 23 cents of every dollar available for us to pay our bills and be able to enjoy the life that we have, leaving only a mere 3% in saving for future spending needs. You know, there's an old proverb that's been around for thousands of years, and it says, consider the ant and be wise. And it talks about how that the ant every day takes food into the ground so that at the time in the ant's life, when there's no food available in the winter, that ant is able to eat from the stores that they've saved up. But if we're spending everything we make and we've only got 3% left to save, that doesn't leave us a lot for future spending needs. What if, on the other hand, you could use the strategies that banks and Wall Street use to effectively manage money and to treat your household income like a business? What if we could show you how you could reduce the amount of interest you're paying to 22%, to show you how to effectively reduce the taxes you're paying? Now, what would that do? That would increase the money available for you to live life and enjoy a better life than you're living now, and have more money to save for the future, and do all of that without spending any more money than you're spending now. It's just learning how to reallocate those dollars to work to accomplish the goals that you want to set forward. That's what understanding how banks and Wall Street work and how they manage money can make a big difference in your life. Now, first off, we need to gain some knowledge and understand how banks think, to understand how Wall Street thinks when it comes to money. And having that knowledge is good, but putting that knowledge to use is even better. Knowledge only becomes power when you put it into action. You can get in the most amazing, powerful Formula One race car in the world. You can sit in the seat, they can strap you in, you can put your hands on the steering wheel, and you can think, wow, what an amazing experience. But the power of that engine is not fully realized until you hit the ignition switch and you start that engine, and that massive machine roars to life. And then when they push you out onto the track and you put the pedal to the metal, the tires burn and you go screaming down that straightaway at 200 plus miles an hour, that's when knowledge becomes power. The same thing is true in understanding how banks and Wall Street think and you developing that same mindset. You know, what if I could show you how that you could create wealth just like banks and Wall Street do? Those same strategies they use, you can use as well to create wealth for your future spending needs. Learning how to effectively save and invest for the future. What if I could show you how you can spend less money in interest so that you can save that money for your future spending needs? What if I could also show you how to improve your cash flow, to decrease your taxes, help you save money for college, and ultimately be able to retire with tax-favored income? Having the knowledge of the banks and Wall Street and how they do these things in their business can help you in your own personal life as well. But for far too many Americans, they end up playing the game of life, and not the board game, but it feels like the board game. Do you ever know what it feels like to take one step forward and two steps back? You think you're getting ahead in life, and the next thing you know, there's another bill or something else you've got to buy, and you just never seem to financially get ahead. We've all spent time living the game of life. Let me show you what I mean by that. You know, over a typical family's working career, husband and wife, they're going to earn on average in the United States of America $2 million. Now think about that. In the 30 to 40 years that you're going to be working and earning a living, over $2 million is probably going to pass through your hands at some point in time. But unless you understand how money works and you put your money to work for you like the banks and Wall Street do, here's what ends up happening. And this is what we see with most Americans. Remember the example earlier that we said most Americans only end up saving a mere 3%. And that bears out in this statistic. Because out of the $2 million that the average American family will earn during their working career, they only have $60,000 in funds available in retirement, and that includes the equity in their home. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but this is not the American dream that I signed up for. When I signed up to go to work and make a living and believe that I could live the American dream, I also wanted to live the American retirement. And $60,000 is not going to let me live the retirement that I want to live. So I had to learn to live life differently. And if you want a better outcome, you have to learn those very same things. Now, I want to mention that banks understand how money works. And banks are able to take money and grow money so that they have more money available for their use. Do you know how to do that? Those are some things we're going to talk about in the next few minutes. Understanding your cash flow is important because money comes in and money goes out. But when you track your money, you control it. Now, what do I mean by tracking your money? If we think of money as a liquid asset, and that's how it's defined in economic terms, money comes to us in the form of a paycheck. It's money that flows downstream from our employer, and we get a paycheck every month. If we don't learn to manage the inflow and the outflow of money going into our bank account, it's kind of like a river with no dam to control the flow of the water going downstream. Money comes in and it just rushes downstream and goes anywhere and everywhere it wants to go. Learning how to track your money means giving your money a purpose and a mission and spending money on purpose for a purpose. And that requires that nasty word called budgeting. or what I like to call a systematic spending plan so that you can take control of your money. But you got to remember, we have been trained in this society, in the United States of America, not to save, but to spend. And if you're not careful and you don't realize it, there's a significant amount of leakage taking place in your spending habits out of every paycheck that you receive. Yeah, it's very easy to overspend. Why is that? Because we tend to live life by default. We get into habits of spending, learned behavior. And once we learn a behavior, we tend to follow that behavior because it doesn't require any brain power to think into what we're doing. And we engage in habits of spending money in a certain fashion or a certain style, maybe because that's the way our parents did, or maybe that's what we learned from a neighbor or someone that's close to us that taught us some semblance of budgeting or money management, or maybe we just get all our money and we spend all our money. Most of us tend to live our lives on autopilot financially. And when we do that, there's a significant amount of leakage of dollars that are escaping and going where it wants to go rather than where we want that money to go to do the most good for us. And if we don't stop the leakage in our spending out of the paycheck that we receive every month, it is literally costing you money. Now, let me give you a classic example of what I mean by that. Let me introduce to you the 80-20 rule. It's important that we plan for both the expected and the unexpected. You know, as we go through life and we're getting a paycheck, we know about 80% of the things that are going to impact us financially. And in some semblance, we've got some plan to address those issues. We know we have a house payment every month. We've got a car payment every month. We've got to pay our utility bills. We've got to put food on the table, gas in the car, clothes to wear. And we plan to some degree to address these things. But there's a 20% that we often forget to plan for, and that's emergency things that arise in our lives. And if we're not careful, emotional spending of things we think we need today, and we end up spending money that we should have saved to spend tomorrow, and we spend that money today, and then when we have another emergency arise, we don't have the cash to pay for it. And that becomes problematic, but it leads back to what we saw earlier in that pie chart of how most Americans live their lives. That 20% can be an extremely expensive proposition. But if we can get control of that 20% through managing cash flow and thinking into how we handle money and giving our money a purpose and directing where we want it to go, we can improve our financial situation. But you know, when we think about banking and we want to get the idea of thinking and acting like a bank or a financial institution, a bank is a business. So as an example, you put $10,000 in the bank. Based upon current rates available today, you might get a 1% rate of return on your money. Not stellar, but it's better than sticking it in the mattress and not earning a dime. So you put $10,000 in the bank and you walk in the bank the next day to borrow $10,000. Are they going to loan you that money at 1%? Well, of course not. Why? Because banks collect interest from consumers. It's how they make money. So depending on your credit worthiness and the type of lending you're doing, whether it's a credit card or you're financing a car or a house or borrowing money to start a business, you may be charged 4, 5%. Or again, if it's a credit card that's unsecured debt, you could be charged as much as 24 to 29% for that same money. That's how banks make money. Wall Street lends money, and when they get that money back, they earn interest the very same way. Now, if we learn to think into how we're managing our money and we adopt a banking mindset, how would you like to be the bank and be able to earn interest yourself and receive that money for your financial spending needs? That's what we want to teach you, how to think like a bank. Now, the third thing we've got to make sure that we address is the issue of debt. We need to make sure that we minimize the amount of debt that we take on and only take on good debt when we're going to take it on to create additional wealth. Now, debt can be a useful tool. We may need it to buy a car, to buy a home, to start a business, to purchase some land, large expenditures that we need to finance because we don't have that capital readily available, or we don't want to spend the capital we have, and it makes financial sense to use debt as a tool. But far too many Americans take on too much debt. And as a result of that, it becomes a ball and chain that restricts their ability to save for their financial future. Now, it's important to remember and get the mindset that banks earn interest and consumers pay interest. So, if you want to change the way you look at money and change the way your financial results are being experienced in your own life, you've got to get a mindset of how do I earn interest? How do I put my money to work so that it is growing for me and I'm not giving that money away to someone else? Remember, banks and Wall Street understand money and how it works. Do you? Well, let's take a look at a typical American family based upon what we saw earlier in that pie chart and kind of look at how the typical American lives life. Let's take a look at Mark and Joyce. Mark is 37, Joyce is 35. They want to retire at the age of 65. Now, they've set some goals for their lives, but we need to understand where they are before we can get them to their goals. So in talking to Mark and Joyce, Mark makes $3,960 a month. Joyce and her income brings in another $3,125. And in looking at what they want to have when they retire, they want to retire with a monthly income goal of $5,000 a month. Now, they've got 3 children, 3, 4, and 8, but because they fall into that mindset of the typical Americans, how they've been spending their money and not educating themselves on how to use money as a tool to create wealth, how to properly invest and properly save for the future, they currently don't have any discretionary dollars to start college funding for their children. But when asked about their goals, they've got many goals. They want to get their spending under control because they know they've got a lot of leakage in the way that they're spending money right now. They want to increase their retirement income. They want to reduce the amount of money they're paying in interest, and they'd like to get out of debt sooner rather than later. They want to plan for college for their kids, and they want to increase their overall savings. And they're trying to figure out how to do that with the money they're making right now. Now, if we look at what they're doing better than many Americans today because they've got an emergency fund. In addition to cash in the bank to pay the bills, they've got an emergency fund that in the event a crisis happens, they've got $6,000 set aside. They've got about a 1-month cushion that in the event they couldn't work, they could pay their bills for at least a month, and they're adding $25 a month to that emergency fund. Because that's money they're going to need, they can't put it at risk, so they're earning a very nominal rate of return. We also see that Mark has a 401k in his place of employment. He currently has a little over $36,000 in that account, and he's making a $300 a month monthly contribution right out of his payroll so that he has an opportunity to grow those dollars. Now, on the other hand, like typical American families, they've got some issues with how they spend their money. They've got some medical and dental bills that they've incurred, braces for the children. They've got some money on a credit card. They've purchased some furniture. Like most Americans, they finance their home and their mortgage. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But now they find themselves with a monthly debt service of a little over $2,000 a month and over $180,000 in indebtedness. Now, keep in mind, this is enriching the lending institution that loaned them the money to be able to finance these events. So in having conversation with Mark and Joyce and getting them to think into their spending habits, they've realized that their spending habits are making the banks in Wall Street rich at their own expense. And it was an eye-opener for them when they realized that out of that $180,000 of debt that they have, by the time they pay that back to the bank, they're going to have paid an additional $199,959 in interest for a total repayment of $380,157. This is how banks and Wall Street make money. When Mark and Joyce saw this, they had a realization that they needed to change the way that they were spending, and they needed to prioritize how money came in and money went out so that they could do the college planning they wanted to do. They could save more for retirement. They could accomplish their goals for the future. But they also realized that if you pay less interest, you're going to end up with more money for future spending needs of your own. Now, when we looked at Mark and Joyce's current spending plan, again, Mark's got $36,500 currently in his 401k. He's making a $300 monthly contribution. That account is earning a 5% annual rate of return, and Mark's in a 25% tax bracket. So if he continues to do that for the next 30 years until he gets ready to retire, Mark's going to generate a decent sum of money, just under $500,000, $408,980. If we factor that in and we take the 25% taxes away from that, he still has $306,000 and change available after taxes. Much better than the typical $60,000 we see an American family do. But if Mark can learn to think like a bank, and Mark and Joyce can learn to think like Wall Street and implement those strategies of investing and saving and directing money where money needs to go, maybe they could have a better outcome. Now, what if Mark and Joyce became the bank and they began to be more prudent in their saving, more intentional in how they're spending money, and they began to restructure their spending and their saving? They begin to use the same wealth building strategies as banks and Wall Street do to start creating additional investment opportunities to save money for college, to save money to maybe pay the house off early, to save money so that they could have a better retirement. They could generate these additional savings to, as I said, save more money for the kids or for retirement. They could reduce the amount of the interest that they paid, or they could have the latitude to do some or all of this depending on how they want to intentionally direct where that money goes. And as a result of strategy spending and looking at how they reallocated, once they learn how banks and Wall Street engage in planning and they begin to implement those own strategies in their lives, instead of having $306,668 after taxes in retirement, Mark and Joyce are going to be able to have $1,004,387 available in a tax-favored retirement plan. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? You know, the banking benefit to Mark and Joyce, if you think about learning the strategies of the banks and Wall Street and applying those in your life, how did that benefit them? Well, they increased their savings, $1,004,387 in retirement. They paid less in interest. They reduced their total interest payments by over $122,000. So learning to use the principles of Wall Street and the banks, Mark and Joyce saw a net financial benefit of $820,458. Now, taxes are a big deal because the less you pay, the more you keep. One of my good friends who's a CPA, I love what he says. He says, it's not how much you make, it's how much you get to bring home after Uncle Sam reach in and takes his part first. And understanding taxes is something that's important. And I think the question for all of us is, where do we expect tax rates to be in the future? We as a country are $26 trillion in debt. We've got significant government programs like Medicare and Social Security that are on the brink of insolvency. Do we think interest rates are going to go higher? Do we think they're going to go lower? Or do we think they're going to stay about the same? Most people that I talk with when I do events like this across the country believe in the future that tax rates are going to go higher. So if tax rates are going to be higher in the future, does it really make sense to postpone taxes now by using traditional investment classes like an IRA or a 401k? Because all we're doing is deferring what we're going to have to pay Uncle Sam down the road. There is a day of reckoning. And the big question is, when should we start tax planning? I think for me, the answer is now. Because if we can pay less in taxes now and do so legally within the confines of what the IRS code allows us to do, again, we've got more money that we can be intentional about putting into a position that it can grow and create money for us in the future. So let me ask you a question. Would you accept this as a business offer? I want you to front all the money. I want you to take all the risk. I want you to run the business on a day-to-day basis. And 30 years from now, I'm going to tell you how much you owe me. Now, Which one of us would want to go into business with somebody like that? Guess what? We have all done that when we've gone into business with Uncle Sam using traditional retirement type plans, IRAs and 401ks. Again, learning to think like a bank in Wall Street and understanding that I can pay a little bit of tax now or I can pay a lot more taxes later depending on how I structure my retirement. Let me explain. Many of you may or may not be familiar with the rule of 72. The rule of 72 says we take 72 and we divide it by the rate of return that we are earning on a particular asset, and that tells us how long it's going to take money to double. So if I can earn 10% on an investment, that money is going to double every 7.2 years. So let's assume I make a one-time contribution of $5,000 into an IRA. I'm in a 25% tax bracket, and I can get a 10% rate of return. Again, this is hypothetical for illustrative purposes only. So at age 45, I make a $5,000 contribution. My tax savings, $1,250. Now, a few years later, age 52, that money's grown. It's doubled to $10,000. And by the time I get to 66, if I continue to earn 10% a year, that $5,000 investment has grown to $10,000. Now, I haven't had to pay on that, so at this point, I have saved $10,000 in taxes that I would have paid. But now, all of a sudden, I get to retirement age, and I've got $40,000. I've saved $10,000 in taxes, and now I get ready to take that money out. Well, $40,000 at 25% is $10,000. So if I take that money and I spend that in the first year of my retirement, I had to pay $10,000 in taxes. So where's the tax savings? All that money I saved, I ended up paying in 1 year. Where's the tax savings on that? As a matter of fact, most people that are investing in a 401k or an IRA and having an opportunity to save money for retirement, when they get ready to retire, the amount of money that they've saved over their working careers is recaptured in the taxes they paid in just a few short years. And if they've earned a substantial amount of money and they're taking that out over their entire retirement lifetime, they're going to pay significantly more in taxes than they would have paid if they paid along the way. Now, let me give you another example of taxable versus tax deferred versus tax free. If I've got a $10,000 investment and I can earn a 7% rate of return on an annual basis, again, this is a fictitious investment, and I can let that money set aside for 28 years, and I've got a 25% tax rate that I find myself in a 25% tax bracket, what is the value of money after taxes? Well, if I could put money into a tax-free investment earning 7%, I would have $66,488 from a one-time $10,000 investment. A tax-deferred investment, the money doesn't require me to pay taxes until I take it out, but when I get ready to take that money out, the net impact, I only have $49,866. A taxable investment that I would pay taxes every year as I put money in and receive those earnings, $41,900. So the ability to be able to create a tax-favored solution and to look for opportunities to enjoy tax-free money is maybe something I need to consider. Again, banks and Wall Street understand the power of taxes and how to minimize taxation on the types of investments they utilize for their long-term financial interest. Wall Street understands how money works. Banks understand how money works. Are you beginning to understand some things that banks and Wall Street are doing that maybe you're not doing in your personal financial plan up to this point? Now, risk is another issue that we need to talk about because many people take too much risk with their money. And especially as they get closer to retirement, that is a point in their lives they can afford to take the least amount of risk. Why? Because when we're young and we're growing, time is our ally. And if we make a financial mistake, the power of compounding allows us to catch up and grow money. But as we get closer to retirement, time becomes an enemy. If we lose money because we've got too much money exposed to the market, all of a sudden, we don't have time to earn that money back. Think about how many people that were going to retire in 2001 that saw their savings cut in half by the major market correction we experienced in 2001. And for the next 5 to 7 years, they worked just to regain what they lost. They didn't gain anything more. They just regrew back what they lost. They got to 2008, got ready to retire, and bam, another major market correction and another 5 to 7 years to regrow that money. Many people that are going into retirement now had to postpone retirement for 10 to 15 years to grow the wealth back that they lost because they didn't understand what banks understand about risk mitigation and risk management. Remember, you're going to earn, on average, husband and wife, over $2 million in your working career. And the last thing you want to do is to gamble that money away so that it's not there at the time that you need it. Now, we face a lot of potential risks as we go through life: taxes, market risk, inflation, emergencies that may arise that we haven't planned for, disability, we get sick and we can't work, being sued, being a victim of fraud or identity theft. Outliving your money is the number one fear of today's retirees. That's a potential risk if you haven't planned for it. If you get sick and you don't recover, that could be a long-term care event that can be very costly, and that can be a risk to your money. Or you die prematurely and you leave your family without the primary breadwinner to provide the income that they need to support their standard of living. All of those are risks that we face. Now, banks and Wall Street insure against those risks. They understand that for pennies on the dollar, they can insure themselves that in the event those risks happen to them, there is insurance to provide dollars to protect them in those instances. Do you understand what risks that you need to insure, and have you done that? And what risks are you willing to take on your own that you're willing to be financially responsible for now and into the future? Banks and Wall Street understand that. And I hope now you have an opportunity to begin to understand and begin to be thinking about the risks that you need to hand off to an insurance company versus the risk that you need to maintain and keep for yourself. The next thing we need to think about is a roadmap to your financial future and your financial success. After all, you can't figure out how to get there, wherever there is for you, if you don't know where you are. If you don't know where you are financially and you haven't counted the cost to see what you've got, you don't know what it's going to take to get you there. It's like saying, I want to go buy a house, and you haven't looked to see how much money you've got in the bank. You don't know how much money you've got to go borrow from the bank to be able to buy that house. If you want to start a business and you've not counted the cost, you don't know if you're going to need to go borrow money or if you've got sufficient cash. Or if you're planning on retiring down the road and you've got X number of dollars in the bank and you haven't done the math to figure out, is that going to be enough and how much income is that going to generate? You've got to have a roadmap and a plan to figure out where you're going. Now, we need to understand, and again, banks and Wall Street get this, but most consumers don't. There are 3 phases of money in your life. This is the estate planning cycle. Now, when I talk about estate planning, I'm not talking about when you die necessarily, but that's part of it. But estate planning starts with accumulation. When you get your first job, whether if it was a lemonade stand in your front yard, mowing grass in the neighborhood, throwing papers, going to work at a department store or grocery store, whatever it is, the minute you started receiving a paycheck, you started accumulating wealth. And you do that throughout your working career. And for most folks, they're going to spend about 1/3 of their lifetime having the opportunity to accumulate wealth. This is where that $2 million of earnings opportunity comes in for the typical American family. And then you transition from accumulation into what we call decumulation, retirement, where you need to take the assets that you've accumulated over your working career and maximize how you use those to create sustainable income so that as long as you live, you're going to continue to have a paycheck. Just like when you were working, you still have to have a paycheck in retirement, because there are going to be bills that are going to follow you the rest of your life until you go to your grave. And those same bills are going to be left to your survivors, and they're going to have to pay those bills until they too pass on. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, when you and your spouse are gone, how do you transition what's left and distribute those remaining assets to your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids, or a cause or charity that you care about? Now, your money needs a success plan. And you need to ask some important questions to begin to think like a bank and think like Wall Street and treat your money like a business and give your money a purpose and a direction. The first question you need to ask is, where are you right now? You need to do a financial inventory of the assets you have available, the plan you have in place, understanding where you're spending your money now and in what amounts and what that looks like. Once you've done that, the next question is, where do you want to go? Is it saving money for college? Is it paying off your home earlier? Is it saving for retirement? Is it a combination of those? Is it putting money aside to go on your dream vacation, to go visit Europe, to go to visit Australia? Whatever you may want to do as a big goal or dream, starting a business, whatever that might be, where do you want to go? The third question, what's holding you back right now? What are the financial constraints that you find that are limiting your ability to bring that dream to financial reality? And then once you know what's holding you back, the next question you got to ask yourself is, how do you fix that? What are the steps that you need to take, and what is the action plan that you need to put in place with your roadmap for financial success to get you to where you want to go? Now, that may require that you learn some new information and to embrace a new way of thinking. But as you learn new information, you plan out your next step. And then you plan your next step. And then you plan your next step. But after you begin to put your plan in place, ultimately, you've got to take action. Remember, all you've done up to this point is to accumulate knowledge and to think about the other things we've spoken about up to this point. But until you take action, until you turn the key and start the engine, nothing takes place. And then once you begin to take action, it's important periodically that you revisit and revise. Once you've saved enough money for your kids to go to college, now you've got to be intentional about where you redirect the money that was going there to another priority, another goal in your life. So it's not you put a plan together and walk away and forget it. It's a plan that you tweak and manage and revise. Just like an investment manager at Wall Street tweaks and manages and moves money in and out of various portfolios based upon what's going on in the specific goals and objectives they've reached, or how banks manage portfolios of loans and how they structure different packages together, they revisit and revise. You have to develop that same mindset in your own financial planning. So at the end of the day, you've got to ask yourself, what do Wall Street and banks know about money that I should know? You've got to educate yourself. You've got to ask yourself, do I want to begin to earn interest like a bank? Do I want to grow my money like Wall Street? Or do I want to be like the typical American consumer and pay that money to someone else? Do I want to be the bank where I have an opportunity to grow wealth and create wealth? Or do I want to have the outcome in retirement that when I'm getting ready to retire, there's not enough money there to do the things I've always dreamed about wanting to do? Well, I've got good news. The financial professional that invited you to hear this on-demand training is here to help. This is what they teach people to do. They have been uniquely trained to understand how banks and Wall Street think, and how banks and Wall Street structure the way that they're intentional about managing money to put money to work for them so that it can grow and achieve their objectives. This is what they would like an opportunity to teach you. And the question I have is, are you interested? Would you like to learn how to think like a banker, how to think like Wall Street, and to put your money to work so that it is working effectively and efficiently for you, so that you can accomplish your goals and dreams for the future? So let's review what we've talked about and what the financial planner that invited you to this event can do for you. Number one, they want to impart knowledge. They want to help you understand to think like a bank, to think like a financial institution and how to put your money to work intentionally and on purpose. They want to sit down and help you analyze how you're spending money right now, help you identify the leakage in your plan so that you can stop those leaks and intentionally redirect that money where it can help you accomplish your goals and dreams for the future. They want to help you make sure that you're properly managing debt and using it as an effective tool where it's important and necessary, but not overuse debt so that it becomes a burden. They want to show you strategies that can help you minimize the amount of money you're paying in taxes today and the amount of taxes that you may be paying when you retire. At the same time, they're going to have a conversation with you about the risks that you may be exposed to and share with you some ideas and concepts. And they may introduce you to other members of their team that can help you implement specific strategies and tactics to minimize the amount of risk that you're currently taking on. One of the most important things they're going to do for you is to help you to create a roadmap for your financial success, whether it's saving for college, it's paying off your home or other debts early, it's creating a financial success plan for your retirement, it's putting money aside to start a business, whatever it is, they're going to help you map out a strategy to make that happen. But there's one more step in the process, and that's your step. That's the decision that you have got to make right now. Why? Because a goal without a plan is a wish. And if you've got goals and dreams for the future, but you don't have a plan in place to fulfill them, it's nothing more than wishful thinking. And that and a dollar is going to get you a sweet tea at McDonald's, and that's about all it's going to get. Remember, your money needs a success plan. As you sit down to put together a roadmap, you've got to evaluate where you are right now, where you want to go. Be very candid and have that man in the mirror, woman in the mirror moment look to say, what's holding me back and how do I fix it? To work with the financial professional that invited you to hear this on-demand training so that you can learn new information and plan out your next steps so that you can take action and begin to put your money to work on purpose to achieve your goals and dreams for the future. And then have those periodic revisits and revisions so that as you hit certain goals and they're accomplished, how do you redirect those dollars and keep them being intentional and working on purpose to help you accomplish your goals and your plans for the future? Now, the financial professional that invited you to hear this training wants to share with you the secrets that banks and Wall Street know and to show you how you can use this knowledge to enjoy a better financial outcome. So, what are the next steps? I'd like to encourage you to schedule a complimentary strategy call with the financial professional that invited you to this event. They're going to briefly introduce themselves. They're going to have an opportunity to get to know you and your situation because that's what this call is all about. You're going to talk, they're going to ask questions, and they're going to listen intently to your answers to understand what is important to you, to understand your goals, your dreams, and ambitions, to get an understanding of the fears and concerns that you have, the things that keep you awake at night. And best of all, no pressure, no selling. This is a conversation about you, and there's no cost and there's no obligation. This is an investment in you to help share with you some insights and strategies to determine if what they do works for you and for you to be able to determine if what this financial professional brings to the table is right for you. Now, after that conversation, there will be a what's next discussion. They will share with you what they would be willing to do to help you on your way. If they find out after having a conversation with you that everything is fantastic and there's nothing that they can do to help you, they're going to say thank you for your time and you've had a chance to make a new friend and a new acquaintance. But if there are some things that they can do to help, then they can share those ideas and insights with you. They can share those strategies and tactics and solutions, and then you have the opportunity to say yes or no. Again, no high pressure, no arm twisting, no cost, no obligation. They will fully disclose what they would do for you and how they would be financially compensated if you decide to bring them on as a financial coach and partner to help you get to the end of the rainbow, to be able to accomplish your financial goals and dreams for the future. Now, the one thing I don't want to have happen is at the end of this event that we're wrapping up right now, for you to say, I've got this put together. John, everything's great, and I don't have to worry about anything. Well, let me remind you of this. You don't know what you don't know. And if you're making financial decisions with incorrect, incomplete, or bad information, you may not be making the very best financial decisions that can bring about the best financial outcome for you. I would encourage you, matter of fact, I would implore you to schedule a complimentary strategy call. This may well be the best 30 to 45 minutes that you've spent on the phone this year. Why? Because you can know for certain if what you're doing is working. And if it's not, then you're going to have an opportunity to talk to a very knowledgeable, very thoughtful financial professional who can give you some insights and advice. And then it's up to you whether you want to take it or not. But I don't want you to be one of those individuals that says, hey, this sounds great, I'll do this later. And then 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you look back and you shake your head and say, if only I had listened. If only I had taken action when John shared this information with me, my financial situation today could have been better than it is right now. You're investing 30 minutes of your time. Is that worth an opportunity to see a better financial outcome for you and your family in the future? I think so, or I wouldn't be doing this. And having done this for 30 years and seeing the results of men and women that have listened to what I've shared and acted on that advice, not a single time have they come back and said, John, hearing you speak and meeting with a financial professional as a result of that was a waste of my time. I've never been told that in 30 years. So I want to encourage you to schedule a complimentary follow-up call with the financial professional that invited you here. Hey, if they're willing to meet you in person, get them to buy you lunch or dinner. They'll be willing to do that. If you're still concerned over COVID-19 or you're just in a situation that you can't be able to meet face-to-face, they can have a call, or if you're tech savvy, you can do a video conference call to meet. But please do yourself a favor and invest 30 minutes in yourself to find out if there's a possibility that you could have a better financial outcome. Now, I want to say thank you for taking time to be with us today. I hope the information I've shared with you has been beneficial. I again want to thank the financial professional who cared enough about you and your financial future and cared enough about your family to invite you to attend this event today. I know they're going to be reaching out to you to get your feedback on what you heard today, and I hope you'll take 30 minutes of your time and carve it out to have that all-important conversation with them. Again, thanks for joining us, and have a great day.